Bam. All right, here we go. 3, 2, 1. We're live.
Hey, friends. Welcome to Father's Voice, episode number 6. A little bit about this podcast. It's dedicated to empowering men to embody the multifaceted roles of a father, a husband, provider, and a man of God with grace and purpose. Today is Valentine's Day, so today's going to be a fun, interesting episode. We're going to explore the profound significance of fatherhood, the transformative power of embracing our divine calling as men. So welcome to Father's Voice, where every word spoken resonates with the heartbeat of fatherhood excellence. So today, we're going to be talking a little bit about marriage and relationships. And today we have a fantastic...
A special
guest that joins us. And Mike Harlan, it is a delight to have you with us on Father's Voice.
Well, I'm honored to be here. Yeah, honored to be here with two great men of God, man. So it's good.
Yeah, it's
and on
good.
Valentine's Day.
Come on.
On Valentine's
Day of romance.
Day of romance. Yeah.
Yeah, and we're going to have a great conversation about something that you're really good at. You have you ran a Monday night marriage Mondays with your wife, which I know a lot of people miss. That's probably something you're going to be bringing back pretty soon.
I didn't know anybody missed it.
I think a lot of people miss it, to be honest.
Yeah, wow.
Because you have a lot of great content, a lot of great experience. So why don't we start with that? How long have you been married, and talk a little bit about your relationship with Pastor Cheryl?
Yeah. Well, with it being Valentine's Day today, guys, believe it or not, we're celebrating 47 years of Valentine's Day together.
That's good.
Is that crazy? And been married 41 years.
Wow.
So I know I only look 40, but we've been married 41 years.
Black don't crack.
Black don't crack. 100%. Right? And so 41 years, we had one child, our daughter, Nikki. She passed away at 36. And so she was, our life, of course. And, but she left us an amazing granddaughter, Sydney. And so, man, our daughter, Nick, lives on forever. Yeah. So, but yeah, man, it's just been, you know what? I don't even know how to describe it. The marriage has just been amazing. I mean, our relationship from day one, I actually found my wife, actually got my wife on a $10 bet. And
in Detroit.
In Detroit.
Come on.
Detroit, Michigan, right?
What was the bet all about?
The bet, it was we shared two friends, her best girlfriend and I mean, we're best, all of us was friends. And I betted her girlfriend that I would get her, and it was a $10 bet. And I don't want to tell you guys how I was going to get her, but it was a $10 bet. Damn. And I ended up winning. I ended up winning bigger than $10.
Bigger than $10. You won the lottery.
I won the lottery, man. Yes, I did. Yeah. So man, we've just been amazing. I mean,
so you were how old when you guys got together?
I was 16.
16 years old.
16 years old.
So you guys were both in high school?
No, she was out of high school. I married an older woman.
Oh, she's older than you.
How much more? How many more years?
If I tell you guys her age, she probably going to shut me
No, don't tell us
down.
her age. Just how much older than you?
Well, then you're going to know, right?
Nah, we won't. We can't do math. We're guys.
She's actually 3.5 years older than I am.
That's nothing.
Yeah. And so, I thought I was, the man. I had an older woman. All my buddies in high school, they were dating high schoolers, and I had a woman that was a career woman with her own car, her own apartment.
So he saw the car.
I was the man, I'm telling you.
Yeah, you pulled.
16 years old.
16 years old in Detroit and pulls a girl that has a car and 4 years older. Woo!
Man, I'm trying to tell you, man. Right?
So go back again. What was the bet all about? How did
you got to give us more details. I think he's holding back on
it. Look, I can't tell you guys all the detail.
It's only men. The women will never know what happened.
Oh, they'll get back to it. You know what? It's because what's funny is that the men, we talk more than the ladies do.
Yeah.
You guys gossip, man. Why you think you're doing the podcast? This is all gossip. Right?
So you're in Detroit. You're 16 years old. You see this beautiful 20-year-old girl. There's a $10 bet. Help us out with some details.
So let me tell you. Really, it goes back to I used to play drums for a community choir.
Okay. Church choir or just community?
Community church choir.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. And she was starting to come around to the choir with Beverly was our friend, but she had a boyfriend that was already in the choir.
So Cheryl had a boyfriend.
Cheryl had a boyfriend, right? And so, but Cheryl used to see me. Cheryl met me really we went to the same elementary school together and just didn't know it. So we went to elementary school together, come to find out that we lived like 3 or 4 blocks from each other when we were kids. And so the very first time that I laid eyes on Cheryl, I was 14 years old. No, 15. I was 15 years old. She had a boyfriend. I remember telling her all the time. She used to see me, oh, he's such a cute little boy. She used to say that all the time, right? And because I used to flirt with her at 15 years old.
And what did flirt like? Was that like to say,
like
hey,
I used to
girl?
walk up to her like, hey, girl, you know you're my dream girl. And she like, oh, he's such a cute little boy. You need, I got a boy, you know, like that kind of stuff, right? Yeah. And so I used to tell her all the time, I'm going to snatch you from your boyfriend. At 15, I would tell her that, you know. And
Prophesying.
yeah.
Yeah.
Right off the bat. And she would just laugh at it, right? Well, long story short is that when I turned 16, my mom had just brought a brand new car, LTD Unlimited. I don't know if you guys remember those cars, right? And I had got my license, and we were at one of the events, and I drove around the corner in my mom's car, and I told her, hey, you want to get in my brand new car? And she looked at me. She's like, that's your mom's car. That's not your car. I said, yeah, but you still can get in. I'm going to take you for a ride. So I took her around the corner, and it was my birthday. And I was like, so are you going to give me a kiss for my birthday? And she just looked at me. She's like.
So you're 16.
16. So I'm, you know. So she kissed me on my cheek. And when she was going to kiss me on my cheek, I turned around to try to kiss her. Oh. But from there, she started having problems with her boyfriend, and they got into a point where they was breaking up, and we just started talking on the phone. And we would be on the phone, man, from like hours. We would like start off in the evening, and then the sun would be coming up, and we'd be on the phone talking. And
this is probably a phone that's like the old wooden ones, right? Like old back in the day.
You know, the dial-up, man. That was the dial-up.
Yeah, rotary dial.
Rotary dial, and or the push button. I mean, we were kind of fancy, so we had the push button, phone. And but you know, you only had like 1 or 2 phones in your house, and so you had to like, you know, find a place that you can talk, and you play the the cassette mixtape. The music is playing in the background. And so from there, man, it's just that.
Did you guys go to the same high school?
No. She was, we were totally separate lives, man, up until that point. But God knew. And so we, you know, when we finally did get together, I remember her telling my mom, right when we got together, she said, Michael's going to be my husband. And my mom was like, he ain't gonna be. Michael ain't gonna marry no one.
And how old are you at this point?
I'm probably about 17.
So you're still.
But guys, you got to remember, man. My coming up, I was exposed to a lot of things early because I was a musician, so I hung out with a lot of older guys, a lot of older people. I was always around older people.
When you say musician, Pastor, church musician or clubbing and all those, So you were not even Christian.
Even church, man. I mean, I knew about God, but I wasn't, serving God.
We need context right there.
You know,
for sure.
And so, so in clubs, playing, all kind of stuff, man, traveling, and so my lifestyle, I always thought that eventually, man, I'd graduate from high school and move out to LA and be a musician, playing with all, different people. And, it happened somewhat. I didn't actually move to LA, but coming straight out of high school, I toured with a group, I don't know if you guys remember, entitled the OJs. And I did that. So my lifestyle wasn't set up for marriage. My lifestyle was set up for playing. And so pretty much that's what it was. I mean, so that's why my mom was telling Cheryl, he's not the marrying type. He's not, he's not going to marry. But one thing I can say is that watching my parents, if somebody say, well, how is your marriage so successful today?
Yeah.
Watching my parents allow me to have the type of marriage I have now. Because my parents was the best parents in the world. I mean, the greatest mom, the greatest dad that anyone can ask for. So I never came from that background of a broken home or.
So you had a mom and dad in the same home.
I had a mom and dad in the same home, but they were the worst couple in the world together. They were great parents, but as a couple, they were the worst. I mean,
did they end up eventually
getting divorced?
Getting divorced.
So
okay.
By me watching them, I always said I never want to get married. If this is what marriage is all about, I never want to get married.
Because of the way they treated each other?
The way they treated each other, yeah. And so, but in that, it allowed me to say that's the marriage. If I was to ever get married, I would never have that type of marriage. So Cheryl and I, we had agreed years ago, man, in our marriage is that we would never be in a relationship that we're miserable. because you don't want to just coexist in your relationship. I mean, that's the worst place that anybody can be at. And, you know, there's so many couples, man, that's doing that even today. They just coexist because either it's for either they're in church and so they're wearing a mask, letting everyone think they're good, or they're in some type of position that they have to wear a mask, like their relationship is good. And so in public, they're the ideal couple. But man, let them get behind the doors.
Yeah.
You know, they're not even speaking. There's no communication, and there's a lot of that, man. And it's sad because, you know, open communication is really the key factor of a successful marriage. Yeah.
Open communication.
Open communication, man.
Okay, so I have a question. So what, and I don't know if it's too personal, but what are some of the things that you saw in the way your parents treated each other that you say, you know what, I don't want to get married because if this is what marriage is all about, what are things that you saw that, because we could also look at it like if there's a listener that's listening and he has that type of thing going on with his wife, his kids are watching, right? And they're thinking probably what you were thinking back then.
Yeah. One of the things, it was my mom. She's a beautiful lady. My mom was a beautiful mom. Couldn't ask for a better mom. And my dad was an amazing man. My mom had a college degree. My dad was a dropout. And so from high school, went into the Army when he was, 15, because that's the type of home that he came from. And so my mom would kind of like not degrading, but kind of like down talk to him and kind of like make him feel like he wasn't educated, that kind of stuff. So, and I think that happened gradually over the years. And so, you know, we don't really understand the power of words. A lot of people don't understand the power of words. And so you can speak something into a person's life only for so long before it starts affecting them.
For sure.
And so some of the things my mom would say to him, it just affect him as a man. And so the respect factor.
Was it emasculating things?
Yeah, there's a lot of that, you know, and not so much like in the, you know, you're this, you're that. It's just the way, you know, he would say something, she would challenge it. He was, you know, challenge her. And so they got to the point that everything was just a challenge. It would come into argument. They were never physical towards each other, but verbally, man, the verbal abuse, and people don't understand abuse is abuse.
Yeah.
And whether it's physical or whether it's verbal abuse, it can affect people.
For
and
sure.
so what we also have to be careful is that a lot of times we will say stuff, even today, we you know, even myself, I have to catch it to where I'm not saying anything that will verbally abuse my wife, because fellas, we can say certain things that we think that's just normal to say, but you don't even realize the effect that it does to your wife. Even our wives, you know, there's a lot of times Cheryl and I, you know, because we're not perfect. I don't want you guys to think we're perfect, but there would be sometimes she would say stuff and I'll be like, hey, you ain't speaking that into my life. And that would put her on check. And to the sense she's like, well, I'm not saying that that's what you are. I'm just, you know, and so, you know, you just being real.
Yeah.
You know, if it's something, man, that you know that's affecting you, that's affecting your spirit or affecting who you are, if you don't check it, it will continue.
For sure.
And so we're very quick on that. We're very quick that we don't allow that type of thing to happen. As a matter of fact, let me tell you an example. We counsel a lot of couples. We minister to a lot of couples or meet with a lot of couples. And we have a theory in our home that they don't sit in our house. We take them to the backyard when they're like really at each other. We have them outside, you know, outside by the pool, just hanging out. Why? Because we don't want that spirit coming into our house. And so we won't allow that. And so we're careful in guarding our marriage.
Environment.
Yeah, marriage and environment.
You know, just to give some context, if somebody's just listening right now, we got Raul, who's Latino. We have myself, who's white, Hawaiian, and Native American. Then we have Uncle Mike, who's black.
Jap Italian.
Come on.
Yeah. Mixed with Jap. Yeah.
Exactly. And so
you can tell by the hair.
Yeah.
Right? Come on.
Obviously, Uncle Mike, you're certainly, I mean, a marriage that's been 41 plus years, right? That's not the norm
Yeah.
for pretty much anybody. And if you look at, I think I was looking at some statistics even for the black community. I think black women have the lowest marriage rate, and then even on the divorce side, the black couples have the highest divorce rate. And so you're at 41, plus years, and I don't want to say I personally, I think it gets easier the further you go down the road with somebody. I mean, as long as you're committed and the relationship's working well and you've got some things figured out, to me, it does seem like it gets easier. And I would say this to anybody that's maybe even listening right now, like sometimes the first few years can be difficult. I mean, for like myself, having children early in the marriage, challenges, but then certainly past the, a few years into it, it just gets better and better and better. And the way I personally would view marriage is that over time, it actually does get better and better. And would you affirm that?
Yeah, I mean, because you grow. You guys grow. So, like, for instance, I'm not the same person 41 years ago that married Cheryl. Cheryl is not the same person that married me 41 years ago. And so you if you don't adapt to that growth and that change, I mean, guys, women, my mom always told me, she said, every 7 years, a woman changes.
It changes.
And, and if you don't, as men, if we don't tap into that and really, how can I say it? Kind of like nurture that change that they go through.
For sure.
You will have a difficult marriage. And so that's the part of where, both sides are in a submissive position.
Yeah.
You hear in the Bible that the woman should submit to the man. Well, she is only going to submit if the man is in a position for her to submit.
For sure.
And so submissive or submitting in a marriage is not something that's, the Bible speaks on it, but it also has to line up that are we taking care of the daughter that God has blessed us with?
I think that scripture is taken out of context.
100%. 100%. And so, and you find women, I'm not submitting to him. And it's like, why not? Well, then you look at the guy, I understand why you don't want to submit, And so, it takes a lot of content. And I just think, when we break it down as far as even like when we break down percentages of the different races and that, well, you got to look at the cultures behind the races when you start looking at,
very true.
Marriage rates, divorce rates and everything. Because some of the cultures, outside the African-American culture, the black culture, is that some of it is that your culture or the history behind it is that we don't divorce no matter what.
Right.
So you live a life of misery. So, because your mom, your dad, your grandmama, and everybody, you have a grandmother who stayed with your grandfather and all she did was cook and clean the house and there was no love there, or you have someone that's used to be in abusive relationships and they stay there because that's what's been told. That's how they've been raised. But, you have to understand that's not what marriage is all about. And to me, I broke the generational curse in my family to what we did. And as even the norm with us being married all these years. And I mean, we're celebrating, man. You guys, I mean, if you was to see us together and you have witnessed it, man, what you see is real.
Yeah.
That's not fake. It's not,
you guys genuinely both enjoy each other. And
it's genuine.
And you've even said before, like, it's gotten better over time.
100%, dude. I mean, it's like, I don't even know. I mean, we're just talking about how would we function if the other one wasn't here. And I was like, well, you make sure we got our life insurance paid, number one, and then right, that's a plug. Primerica, guys, make sure you look up. Yes, we will take care of you.
I think, and I'll say just briefly some of that. So, like, obviously, to anybody who has, especially when you have dependents, it's essential to have life insurance.
100%.
Right, and I advise that to anybody. Like, as you have each kid, up the amount. That's just an opinion, but I certainly would agree with that. But I would say this too. In regards to the change that you speak of, that you go through seasons, like women go through seasons, men probably less so. I think women primarily go through.
We go through seasons.
We do.
We have periods just like women.
But they say women are they're first a maiden, then they're a mother.
Controversial.
No, I mean, I'm serious, man. You go through the change.
Then they're a matriarch. But I mean, the women's phases are very drastic, right? When you go from a maiden to a mother, it's like you've had kids. When you go from a mother to a matriarch, now you're a grandmother. And so there truly are for women different seasons. And I would agree that in many ways, like the person that you marry, you sort of grow together.
Yeah.
And so as you go through each season, it's like sometimes, it's felt like me, like they say, figure them out. Well, every time I think I figured out, she changes. And sometimes I wake up in the morning, I'm like, who did I marry? Who is this person?
You can't figure them out.
You can't
figure them out. You have to roll with the flow. You got to, but you can understand them. You may not be able to figure them out, but you got to come to an understanding. You have to learn how to understand them. And when I say that men go through change, every guy that hits 40 years old goes through a change. Every guy, and there's two things that happen to a man that turns 40. Either he's going to go left, where he's going to become more and more mature who he is, or he's going to go right, and he's going to become stupid, and he's going to start doing things. Now he's trying to regain his youth. He's trying to catch things that he thought he lost. And so, most divorce rates, you find people getting divorced when the guy is 40 years old or plus. I mean, some of the younger couples, it's just they probably never should have gotten married in the first place. But I didn't mean to be like that. But,
no, it's straight up. Yeah.
But but once a guy hits 40, you're really going to kind of like determine where you are.
Yeah.
I'd never forget, man, when I turned 40 years old, the first thing I experienced is getting out of bed and hearing my bones crack. That's the first thing I experienced at 40 years old. And then from there, it was just decisions, man. It was just like the maturity factor was kicking in. And even though my wife was a little bit older, she's been through her change and everything, I found myself going through the same thing. And that's what I mean by that, when, men go through. But, we go through changes like women, but it's all about the understanding. And when you come to understand your wife or understand your significant other, I think that's more so, instead of, because we can't figure them out, guys. We have to be able to come to an understanding of who they are and what's going on with them. Yeah.
That's good. So going back to what you said right now about some young couples that should have just not gotten married, I would like to hit on that. What are some of the things of a young couple that they should do before they get married to make sure they set that foundation so that you would say, you know what, they married young, and that marriage is excellent. That was a solid marriage. They started the right way, instead of, as opposed to the opposite of that, which is, man, some young couples just should have just never gotten married to begin with.
Well, I think a lot of times younger couples or people in general get married on conditions, depending on what the conditions are. So prime example, let me give you an example. My wife, we had our daughter before we got married. So Nick was 3 years old when we got married. And the reason being is because I knew I wasn't ready to get married. And Cheryl knew I wasn't ready to get married. And her whole thing was, I'm not going to marry you because I'm having your child. And to the point, she was even telling me that I could take care of her by myself. If I would have married Cheryl 3 years earlier, we would not be together today.
Wow.
I already know that. And it's because I wasn't ready for that. I wasn't ready for that, and so what happened is that couples, they either get forced into a marriage because of a situation or because of a condition. Yeah, and I call them shotgun weddings.
Shotgun.
Yeah.
And so, my thing is that I just think that, yes, when it comes down to, well, the Word of God says, you shouldn't have sex before marriage, and, if you're having a baby, now let's make it right. Well, it wasn't already all right when you got pregnant. I mean, so, and
that's why it's there for a reason.
Let me give you my story. Right? When we became pregnant, or when Cheryl became pregnant, her dad, he kind of tripped out, right? And I remember the conversation that he kind of we were having, and I kind of came out, man, before I knew it, that slipped out my mouth. I said, well, your daughter's pregnant, not you. And in other words, you want me to marry her because she's pregnant? Or is it because of the fact that it's going to, protect your image? And so we have to be careful, guys.
And so she's pregnant. Let's try to clarify. In the 60s, 70s? When is this? Early 70s?
No. Our daughter was born in the 80s. Like she was born 1980.
Okay, 1980.
Yeah, 1979.
Gotcha.
So, yeah. So, I mean, back then it was still, the church, whatever.
And like historically, I'm going to delve into this just for a second. You'll understand. So 79. So we do know that like the sex revolution sort of in America really happens probably the 70s. And it's probably a bit of a response to, say, for example, abortion being legalized, right? So at the point abortion is sort of legalized, you can have sex without consequence in terms of females, right? And so then what we have, and I'm just talking modern talking, would be, so after this 64 Supreme Court ruling, which allowed abortion throughout the country, then you have the sex revolution pretty much in the 70s. And I believe it to be somewhat of a response to that, because now a female could say, I can have sex without consequence, right? If you went back for thousands of years prior, a woman would know that if I have sex, I could have a kid, I better not. And so women were a bit more selective. So no doubt, let's say in the 70s, sex becomes very pervasive, the hippie era, for example. And even to this day, we still live in that time where people are very pervasive, sexually aggressive, right? And there's not as much consequence because then you can have an abortion. And so even on that issue, Uncle Mike, so you get your girlfriend pregnant, 1980. Was abortion an option? What was your perspective?
Abortion has already, I mean, I think abortion has been an option. It's just that now it's more prevalent that people talk about it more.
For sure.
But I mean, the choice was there.
Like a norm.
I mean,
but was that in your situation, was that something you guys considered or didn't consider?
Yeah. I mean, when it happened, it was like, it happened. I was in college. I was in my freshman year of college, graduating on my freshman year of college, away. And she would come up to the dorm every week. And she's coming to the dorm every weekend. I mean, we ain't sitting there watching TV.
No. There's no Netflix back then, right? It's not...
Yeah, it wasn't Netflix or anything. The TV would go off at a certain time. So, I mean, the TV off, something got to happen, right? and so, we ended up having Nick. I mean, and so the best thing that we could have did, and I mean, my Cheryl is a very strong woman. She's very independent. And so, like I told you, she said that, I can raise her without you if that's what it means. Because, I mean, when Nick got pregnant, guys, I'll tell you, I was playing around. It wasn't like we were in a relationship, but I wasn't solid.
Yeah.
I mean, I was a musician out there. When I say I was out there, I was out there. And so.
So just to think through something, and I think this is the key point, and I agree with you on this. So let's say, for example, another scenario like that plays out. A young man, young woman. There's people like me, and I know I'm a white unicorn in the sense where the first time I had sex was after I said I do with my wife. So I'm that weird guy, right?
And I think that's beautiful.
Right.
Yeah.
But I think that's 5% of the population at this point, right? So it's extremely rare. So I didn't have, but generally most of the population is probably going to be intimate prior to marriage, right? And so here you are in a situation, 1980, you've gotten a girl pregnant. And so let's say that in some ways let's say, I don't want to call it a mistake, but it's a slip up, right? But I think what a lot of people will do is after they've made that slip up, they'll make a series more mistakes, right? So let's say, for example, Pastor Cheryl could have said, okay, now time for abortion. Or even I would agree with Uncle Mike, okay, now I have to get married. So you make one mistake and then a series more of mistakes. And I think what you speak to, and I think this is true, and people need to think this through, just because you get pregnant, number one, doesn't mean you need to marry the person.
Yeah.
Just being straight up. You don't have to marry the person. And if the person's not ready, like you just said, you shouldn't get married to that person because you're asking for all kind of trouble. On top of that, even think through the thing of, and I've tried to work with people as they navigate this. Oh, I'm pregnant. Should I have an abortion? No, don't have an abortion. Have the baby, but maybe give it up for adoption.
100%.
If you're not ready for that child,
That's good.
Have the child, and then have the courage to say what's best for the child. I'm giving it up for adoption.
That's good.
And it's a conversation nobody wants to have or nobody wants to hear, but it's a conversation that needs to be had with a lot of young people. If you make the mistake, let's say, for example, somebody gets pregnant, whatever, they're underage, not married, etc. Well, have the child, number one. You need to look into adoption. I can promise you, I know gobs of Christian couples who would almost literally pay tens of thousands of dollars for a young child. There are no young children in America. And there are lines of Christian couples lined up waiting for children all across America to this very day.
Yeah.
And so then I would say in his situation, there were some good choices that were made, even by him and her, where he said, okay, just because this baby's coming doesn't mean I'm getting married. But then I would say to any young person, if you have a pregnancy situation, you should also be willing to have the child first and then be willing to give it up for adoption. And have the courage to do that.
Yeah, because there's so many, like you said, there's so many couples who can't have children.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I know a few.
Yeah.
I had some friends that went to Europe and paid $45,000 for 2 kids.
Yeah. And
Quite literally, because they're that desperate for children here in America.
Yeah, when we do the orphanage thing, I always have this friend from Middle California. He says, hey, when can you go with me to Mexicali to visit the orphanages? Because I want to adopt one of them. Because in the United States, it's very hard to adopt a kid.
There are no kids available. Yeah. And it's a really hard process to even get kids. And you're basically fighting with a bunch of other people.
Yeah.
So what changed then? What made you say, you know what, I'm going to marry this girl?
Well, I mean,
if a baby didn't do it, what did it?
It wasn't because it wasn't because I like, okay, in my mind, I'm like, okay, I have to do this. She gave me an ultimatum. It's like, either you're going to marry me or we're going to be separated.
Oh.
And because I got caught up in the situation. So it was like, hey, we stop playing games. I'm not dating you no more. Either we're going to be together, we're not going to be together. And guys, I'm just being real, right?
Yeah.
And so in my mind, this is what I'm thinking. I'm like, okay, I'm not going to let another man raise my daughter.
For sure.
That's the first thing I start thinking. And then I'm thinking like, wow, I really do love this woman and I don't want anybody else to have her.
What, I mean, because there's a lot of guys that didn't get raised right that would have chosen the opposite of that. As far as I'm not going to let another man raise my daughter, right? Because you mentioned that you had good parents.
Right.
Maybe they didn't have a good relationship with each other, but to you, they were excellent parents. Do you think that influenced you in making that decision?
Because my dad was like, man, when I think about my dad, man, I think about that's my best friend. That was my buddy. And my dad was so endearing as a father. He never called me by my name. He always called me son. And to me, that was like, that's a very endearing thing. And so no matter what he went through with my mom, he made sure that he took care of his kids. And that was just something that he did. You know, my granddad, same way. My granddad, you know, out of my dad's family, there was like 8 kids. But my grandfather, you know, the song Papa Was a Rolling Stone, my grandfather was out there, man, but he took care of his kids. And so, yeah,
Can I just say something to that?
Yeah.
I think it's very important, that aspect of fatherhood.
Yeah.
So to any man that's out there, like the Bible says, if you don't provide for your own household, you're worse than an infidel. Like you're just a pagan, unbelieving, horrible person. I mean, that's Paul talking. And I think to any man, especially towards his children, it is your job and responsibility to take care of those kids.
Yeah.
And what a blessing it is. And I always think the narrative needs to be flipped. In our world, people treat kids like they're an unwanted, unneeded accessory, when Scripture always treats kids like they're a blessing and something good from God. And every single kid you'll ever have is absolutely a blessing. I mean, I'm looking to have more if I could have, right? Because kids are a blessing. And so to every man that's out there, when Uncle Mike, you hear that from like, you have a legacy of men who are willing to say, that's mine, I'm taking care of them. And so I think it's important for every man out there, if you're any kind of man worth anything, now you and mama might have issues, but it's your responsibility to take care of those children. Doesn't matter.
And it doesn't matter, like you said, Pastor Nate, it doesn't matter where you come from. You know, well, my dad wasn't there for me, or my dad wasn't that, and my mom, you know, it's like, you know, once you come to, especially if you come to know Christ, as your Lord and Savior, it doesn't matter what your mom or your dad was not to you.
That's good.
You know, now it's like, okay, I have to be what they're not. And that's what happened with me, right? I wasn't going to be.
Perspective. It's all about perspective.
Yeah. You know, so I wasn't going to allow their situation, because I wasn't married to my mom or my dad. So that was their marriage. So if their marriage wasn't healthy or whatever, that wasn't my fault. You know, and so I came to understand that. I even had that conversation with my dad before he passed away. I was like, Dad, it's not my fault that you and Mom didn't get together. You know, my dad, he remarried, and, you know, my mom never did. And he said, son, I know. And so he respected me for that, right? Because I treated his wife just like if she was my mom. So, you know, that's another thing. You know, if your parents break up and one of them get married, you can't treat that person, because now that's still your dad or your mom. You have to honor that. You know?
Blended families are challenging.
It's challenging.
But you're exactly right.
Yeah, you know, the Bible tells us to honor our mom and our dad for our lives to be long. It doesn't say honor them if they doing the things you think they should be doing. I mean, we have parents out there, people have parents out there right now, man, that's like out the box. But at the end of the day, you pray for them and you have to honor them, because that's going to bless you in long life.
Yeah.
You know,
let me say this too. So I had one couple that I am close to, and her father, let's say when she's like 20 something years old, her father goes out and cheats on her mom, then leaves her mom. And one thing I kept telling that young lady, I said, he's still your father.
Yeah.
So this man makes a mistake, and you're going to say you're going to write him out of your life. Now, as a Christian, one of the great examples of being Christians is forgiveness. And our forgiveness, according to the Lord in the Lord's Prayer, Jesus says, your sins will be forgiven as you forgive others.
Right.
And so what I would say to any person that's out there, and you can navigate a lot of weird scenarios as you get older and all the changes happen and divorces and breakups and things like that happen. I would say to any person, even in a scenario like this young lady where she's like, what should I do? I said, you need to establish and maintain a relationship with your father in spite of his mistakes. He had 20 years of being a good father, and the Bible's emphatic, honor him. And so my advice would be, don't burn down the bridge. Keep the bridge there. Yes, there are mistakes. You're not going to say this is exactly how I would live. I don't affirm this behavior. However, you should maintain that bridge or that relationship with that person.
Yeah, and Pastor Nate, there's a lot of people that's living in bondage because of that reason. And what I mean by that is that they hold on to that. And, a lot of times we hold on to certain things, man, because we feel like it validates us to be who we are.
Right. Hold on to the hurt.
And you hold on to the hurt. Hurt is not who you are.
Not at all.
Hurt is what you went through.
Absolutely.
And so, do you let that like actually take root in your soul and into your heart? That hurt, you have to release it one day.
Yeah, you got to release it.
Or if not, it's gonna hurt you. And so,
and hurt others.
Hurt people.
Yes, sir.
And so you have to realize, I mean, and I think we all at this table have been through some type of hurt in our life. And, but the thing is that if we were to carrying it to this table, I don't think we would be having this conversation that we're having today.
For sure.
Because the conversation would be different, but we're able to speak about overcoming hurt because we've been through hurt.
For sure.
And so, I just, like I said, I mean, going back to the whole thing of what we've been talking about today is that, I'm just thankful, man, that I'm able to be in the type of relationship that I'm in. And my heart and my wife's heart, man, it goes out to couples.
Yeah. But you had a legacy of good fathers, right? Yeah. And that's passed on to you.
Yeah. And even today, I mean, I look at you guys. You guys are great fathers. You're great men of God. I look at my pastor, Pastor Obed, great man. I remember when their kids were born, and he learned how to become a father. And so, but the thing about it is that I have been surrounded by great men, and the Bible talks about being surrounded by a great cloud of witnesses, right? Yeah. But here on earth, who are you surrounded? Who's surrounding you? Who is your environment? Who are you with? I mean, and that's so important. That
for sure.
The people that you roll with. And so,
so these are all different gold nuggets right here.
For sure.
Mean, it's like it's not just one thing; it's a combination of things. And it started by you saying communication, right?
Yeah.
Last week, we did a podcast on relationships, and we were talking about the four that you were mentioning, right?
Yeah.
We were talking about values. In terms of having a foundation to have a great marriage, right?
Have a successful marriage. Yeah.
That you check all the major boxes. One of them is you got to have the same values. We're talking about that. You got to know how you're gonna run your finances, and that you are equally yoked in the same faith. And I forgot the fourth one, but what is the fourth one?
We kept forgetting the fourth one.
Yeah.
You said politics at some point, but
Well,
I'm
we
not sure.
turned it
It might have
into
been
values,
religion.
but-
Yeah, we turned values. But undeniably, you need to have similar, when you go into a relationship, like a single person out there, try to find somebody who has things in common with you, not so much things that are different, right?
Yeah. So I think, let me tell you, to me, I think a lot of couples focus on the 90% and not the 10%. The 90% is everything that people see. So I got to make sure that, our appearances, that we're happy, appearance that, like you said, values, making sure the bank account is tight in a place, making sure that, anything that's surface, that's the 90%. Anything surface in a relationship is 90%. I mean, even 90%, you can't even put the sex, intimacy. That's 90%, man. The 10%, at the end of the day, that will destroy every marriage is the lack of communication.
For sure.
And we don't find couples really, they don't have, they can have communication, but the wrong type of communication, because a lot of times people assume versus talk. So I assume you're okay. Well, you didn't ask me. Well, I didn't ask you because you didn't say anything. I'm not a mind reader. I mean, think about that, right?
Oh, you have the same problem as well.
Right? No, but that's what happens, though.
Yeah.
That's, because we're thinking that the other one should already know. And versus saying, hey, can we talk? Or can, and anytime you hear your woman or your wife say, can we talk? Guys, you better let
They're ready, huh?
you better let them talk.
And they say that intimacy, if you ask a man what intimacy is, he's going to say sex.
Yeah.
And if you ask a woman what intimacy is, it's communication.
It's communication. 100%.
So if in reality, for a man, if you want intimacy in terms of sex, you've got to be intimate in her way in terms of communication first.
Yeah, it reminds me of a thing that I see in one of the retreats that I went to. Is there's a woman, right, and a guy sitting in the couch, and the woman has this huge nail in her forehead. And you could Google it. It's pretty cool. It says nail in head conversation or something. And the woman goes, babe, there's this aching, throbbing thing in my forehead, and I don't know what it is. And the guy goes, I know what it is. You have a big nail in your head. And she goes, why don't you just listen to me? Why don't you just hear me out? Why do you have to always solve my problems?
Yeah.
And then she goes, okay, let's try it again. And then she goes, yeah, it's like this pain. And the guy's just looking at her like, I know exactly how to fix this problem right now, you know? And then they fight again. And then she goes, and then she starts again. And then he goes, oh, it must be hard. I understand. And then the girl finally goes, thank you, babe. That's all I wanted you to do. Just listen to me, you know?
Yeah, and that's it, man. And Pastor Nate, you said something here, and I just had to pull this up. And we were talking about the physical attraction for men, or intimacy is,
for sure,
is sex, right? Mm-hmm. And the woman is
communication.
Communication,
for sure.
So there's a difference between physical attraction versus emotional attraction.
Yeah.
And I wrote this little note here, and it says, physical attractions are common, but mental connection is rare. Once you had the latter, the former will never be enough. So once you can connect mentally as a couple, the physical aspect is just there.
Yeah.
It just happens.
Yeah.
But if it doesn't happen here, it's not going to happen here. And so you have to mentally be connected and as a couple. And then the other areas won't become force.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And because sometimes those other areas can become force if it's not meant to be connected. And if you're coming in one way, she's another way, and you're not talking, and now all of a sudden you're expecting certain things from her, and she's not there, then what happens, it becomes force.
Yeah.
And that leads to couples splitting up. That leads to couples because now it's like, I mean, I don't like it.
Yeah.
And so communication, guys, I keep going back to the C word. Communication is so important.
Yeah. And, just to spread a little bit of light on it, there is a text, 1 Corinthians 7, and it does talk about how in a marriage, the man's body's not his and the female's body's not theirs. They belong to each other. And it does talk about, like, there's a specific way that the King James actually talks about rendering due benevolence, and that idea of sometimes even a payment that's due in terms of intimacy. So I will say, one, for all the guys in a marriage relationship, if you're communicating well, you're obviously going to be getting intimacy as you would define it in terms of sex. Having said that, like I've seen sometimes in a marriage where, like, I've talked to people and they're like, oh, we haven't had sex in a year. There's a real problem there then.
Yep.
Unless there's something physically
What's the root
unhealthy,
of it?
there's something else that's very wrong with that.
That's the rotten root. We haven't had sex in a whole year. So why? What's the root of what's the cause of that?
Especially if you're physically able to.
If you're able to. Because there may be times where somebody's sick or something else is going on and you're unable to. But if you're able to, then there's probably some kind of issue that needs to certainly be dealt with. Yeah. And I would advise to any couple, like, if you're not being intimate at whatever, and you got to work with each other, because sometimes it's interesting, the male libido is its highest in its 20s. So typical young men, 20 years old. Right now we have a guest right here, and his name's Christian, just got married, 20 years old. His sex drive is through the roof, right? And so in your 20s it is. And then what happens is it flips, and the woman, usually in her 40s, her sex drive goes higher than the man's. But I think it's God's plan in terms of keeping us together.
I'm excited about that. My wife's about to enter into her 40s.
Let's go.
Man, you better put your seatbelts on, Doc. I'm telling you, man.
Let's go.
Yeah. And guys, let me tell you that even after the age of 40, they will go through another change, right? And they go through a change, but you have to be able to roll with that. You have to be able to understand that. And then also what's important with us, because, guys, it's so important that we learn self-discipline.
For sure.
As men, learning self. Women, their discipline is a lot higher than ours, with a higher standard of ours. Most women, I should say, right? And so, but at the end of the day, self-discipline is so important, because it's so easy to say, well, if she ain't giving it to me, I'm going to go find it somewhere else.
That's right.
And now what you're doing, you're inviting something else into the relationship now, right?
Yep.
Because no matter what happens, is that when you open up that door, you're opening up a door to something
for sure
that you really can't handle. You think you can, but you really can't handle it.
For sure.
And so you have to understand that, and that's what the whole, when it goes back to, we can't figure them out, to whereas we have to understand them.
Yeah.
That's where that kicks in at. And so, but once they go through that time of their life, then they're back almost like 40 years old again.
Yeah.
And it's great, guys, because it's really free at that moment. It's like you don't have to worry. They ain't worried. It's just free. And so but it has to be talked about.
Mm-hmm.
And because, can we be really real on this?
Let's go. Let's go.
Absolutely.
Oh.
Hey, we're there's 3 free men here that don't that we're not gonna get fired if we say something that we shouldn't say, right?
No. Yeah.
You guys not gonna get fired? All
Not
right,
at
let's
all.
talk. Let's talk.
So like for instance, and we're on the subject of sex, right?
Yeah, for sure.
And so the thing is that if you're thinking that she likes it the same way that she's been liking it all those years, you're fooling yourself. And if you think that if she thinks that you're liking it the way you've liked it all those years, she's fooling herself. And I say that because you change. The older you get, you change.
True.
Yeah.
When we were young, Pastor Nate, you were saying it, at that young age, it was more quantity than quality.
For sure.
So quantity was, hey, you get a quickie here, you get a quickie there, but the quality of it was like
Low quality.
And so now what happens, you get older, and now you think you can do the same thing you did.
It's high quality, lower quantity, generally.
100%. It reverses, right? But the quality of it changes. And now what happened, it becomes more of what God really created it to be.
Yeah.
And you think about it, the more intimate you become with God, how close you become.
For sure.
That's good.
Through your intimacy with God. Just imagine the more intimate you become with your wife or with your husband, that intimacy rises up in all aspects of the marriage.
And it takes time to get there.
It takes time.
It's not going to happen overnight. So the what I'm getting out of this is that it's worth fighting for your marriage because it's only going to get better.
Yeah, but if it's going wrong, if it's going south, are you man enough or woman enough to talk about it? That's the thing, And a lot of times, what couples don't do, guys, and I have talk with couples, they don't talk about it, and so what it does, it goes untalked about or unheard of, and it becomes dry. And that's when the excitement leaves from the marriage because they're not talking about it. I mean, Sean and I, we talk all kind of crap. I mean, we talk. It's like, but guess what? It keeps it hot. It keeps it spicy. I mean, she sent me a text before I got here, and I can't wait for tonight, girl. I can't wait for tonight either. But it's like. It's Valentine's Day, and we're 41 years in, and we're still anticipating the quantity. I mean, the quality time
for sure
that we're going to have with each other.
And in intimacy, intimacy serves a lot of purposes. Procreation would be a primary purpose.
100%.
But after that, even for women, oxytocin is released when they have sex, which is a binding hormone, which binds them to the person. So quite literally, what happens in intimacy is, in the woman especially, oxytocin is released and it binds her to that person. So it's important to do that because now you're more bound together. And I would even say it like this: the reason why hookup culture is dangerous is because in sex, that is released and you bind yourself to a lot of the unhealthy people. So when you talk about soul ties that aren't good, a lot of times people, if you've had, if your body counts 100 people, you've been attached to all these different people through life because of these chemicals being released in your body.
And that's 100 disappointments.
Precisely right.
Yep.
And so that's why when a lot of times I'm trying to deal with people counseling, trying to help them in a marriage, it's like, am I dealing with a whole person? Because literally what sex could be is if you take 2 boards and glue them together, you could rip those boards apart, but there'll always be chunks of the one and left in the other.
Yeah.
And so a lot of times if you deal with, in the hookup culture we see today, where people have went around and had a whole bunch of different people, are they whole? Right?
Yep.
And so I think it's important as you move in life, to literally allow those unhealthy soul ties to be gone from you.
Keep yourself whole. I love that.
Absolutely.
That's a great analogy.
And you got to, and once again, you got to be careful what you bring into that, because I've actually had couples say, "Well, is it okay for us to watch porn together and to bring porn into the relationship?" Guys, you got to understand, porn is a fantasy. Number one. Number two, when you open that up into a marriage, and I remember when I talked about this one time on Marriage Monday, and somebody took a meme and said, "Pastor Mike said it's okay to have porn, right? I mean, to watch porn." And I'm like, man, I never said that. And I remember our media people taking it down because of that reason. I mean, and it started really
getting viral.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
Because they just took a part of it. I said, and
they put it out of context.
Yeah, exactly what I said. It's like, hey, if you want to do porn, that's up to you. And then they stopped it right at that point, right? But what I came behind and said is that, but understand the things in the enemy, in the spirits that you're inviting into your room.
For sure.
Yeah.
I said, because now you're opening up the doors for all kind of spirits to come into your room. And now those spirits will take over the marriage. And now you find yourself, and this is what I said, now you find yourself that you can't get excited about your mate unless you watch fantasy. Then now you have a fantasy relationship.
It's like, even I would say, like, if you watch sometimes a movie and there are these hot romance scenes where they're slipper and slopper, and don't get me wrong, I agree with you. Intimacy gets better at the time, but a lot of times, especially early in marriage, like if you watch a movie, you think, oh, geez, these hot love sessions all the time.
They rehearse that
for an hour. Exactly right. And then you get married. And I remember when I first got married, and I'm a virgin. I was, not to give you too many details, but like 2-3 minutes in, I'm like, something's wrong with me. No, I'm thinking I need something. Like, I can't go for the hour that I thought I was supposed to. What's the problem here? And you think there's something wrong, but you're matching yourself up against something that's a fantasy, and it's not even connected to reality.
Yeah, fantasy, medicines, they got all kind of stuff, man. They pumping themselves up with and do. It's just like, come on, man.
Yeah.
God did not create that. Not
That's
for
right.
no hour and 2 hours.
Is there porn in the Bible?
Huh?
Is it biblical?
I wouldn't say there's porn, but if you looked at like Song of Solomon, his infatuation with his significant other, I would say is pornographic, right? And not safe for children. So I wouldn't say in the sense of fantasizing about some I don't know, person with all kinds of stuff pumped up here and pumped up there. That's so disconnected from reality and so unhealthy. But in terms of like fantasies or sexting, or I think that stuff's fine with your spouse, and probably it's good, to be honest with you. So not in the sense of pornographic material that's outside of your marriage, but there should be some level of enjoyment and whatever within the marriage.
It's what you create, right?
For sure.
Yeah. So I don't want to say this.
You got to make it exciting.
Because somebody might say I'm wrong. You create your own porn, but see, I didn't say that, right? And so,
play the whole clip.
And so, it's all about what you create within your relationship,
for sure,
right?
Yeah.
And I'm not, believe me, don't make this a meme, guys. I did not say create porn.
I understand,
but I'm just saying what you're saying, you have to create it. I mean,
within your marriage,
and when you asked about
between the two of you,
when you asked about porn in the Bible, look what happened to David. David fantasized that before he did it.
Yeah.
Because the Bible talks about he had to he had to wait 7 days.
He waited 7 days.
So he had 7 days to make up his mind what he was going to do.
Yeah.
And so 7 days to like the Lord speaking to you. I mean, you think about it, guys. Sometimes when we're about to do something crazy, the Lord is speaking to us. He gives us enough time to think
in the
about
Bible, it says He's going to give you a way out.
He's going to give you a way out.
Sure.
He gave David 7 days for a way out. But David had already fantasized by watching her from the rooftop.
For sure.
And that's what porn does. Porn leads you to thinking that, man, I can either conquer that, or I can do that, or I'm going to go out and try to find someone like that, or find this individual. And now you're trying to create something that you can never recreate because they rehearse that. That's production, man.
And let me say this too. We're heading into an unusual world. Like, if you listen to this in 10 years, because of the robots, because of the AI, because of we're going to see things over the next decade that we've never seen before in terms of like the pornographic. And it's so disconnected from reality. And it's so disconnected from, I think, what God's plan is. And we have no idea, like, as much as we can look back and say it's all this, what we're looking forward to in the next decade or so is going to be so much different than what we've ever seen in terms of the robots, in terms of the AI, in terms of the fantasies, in terms of all the unusual things that can happen. But I would agree with Uncle Mike. Within your own marriage, enjoy each other. Whatever is not I remember there would be different people that have all kinds of opinions. So biblically, there's oral sex in the Song of Solomon. Biblically, there's all kinds of enjoying each other. That's certainly found.
We talk real talk on
it's
this.
The truth.
One.
It's the truth. Yeah.
I love this podcast. Let's talk real talk. Come on.
But so you should go out of your way to enjoy, I think, this side of being unhealthy. Right. And so at any point, if it becomes unhealthy in terms of your marriage, or even unhealthy to each other, but certainly marriage is meant to be enjoyed with you and your spouse in whatever ways you would do. So whatever it is, letters, pictures, whatever, things between each other, for sure.
Yeah. And you know what, guys, when you see couples that look like two dry prunes, they have a dry sex life.
Yeah.
Because if your sex life is happening, you ain't walking around looking like a dry prune.
Yeah.
No, and as a man, I mean, you walk with confidence.
Yeah, man. She walk with confidence.
She walks with confidence.
Yeah, especially if you do it right. She gonna walk with confidence, right? and so, dude, that's what. All right, I'll be quiet. So at the end of the day, if you're not talking about it, it ain't gonna be right.
But you gotta spice it up. I mean, I think that's a natural.
For sure.
Growing up, I used to see my dad always spank my mom in front of us.
Yeah.
Just spank her in the butt, And I'm like, hey, okay, that's what you do, all right. So
So
now I catch myself spanking my wife in the butt, as many times as I can.
And that's foreplay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know,
that's good.
that's
Yeah,
early
it's good.
foreplay. Yeah, man. I mean, take pictures while they're in the shower, stuff like. Seriously, right?
Okay.
And
Yeah.
so, man, I can't give y'all my phone.
No. We,
No, but give me some ideas.
Yeah.
Take
Give us
pictures,
all
man.
some ideas.
Catch her while she's jumping out the shower. Click, and like that's something that you send it to her
Oh, okay.
and remind her, you mines.
Never
You're
done.
mine.
I
love it.
that's
I love
just
it.
little things, man.
Yeah.
I mean, and she'll send me back, this like blushing face or a picture that she took of me while I was asleep. So it's
us,
like,
Lord. Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know what I'm saying? It's like, it's so much that you could do, man, to keep your marriage fresh.
Yeah.
And it's not, it won't be weird. It won't be
Yeah.
out of God's order.
You're pursuing her heart.
For sure.
pursuing her heart.
And she sees that how much you pursue her, she's gonna love that.
For sure.
You pursue
Women
her
love
when
to
you
be
went
pursued.
after her.
Yeah.
For sure.
So why aren't you pursuing her now that you're in it?
Yeah.
Because you didn't get her you didn't get her because you had that strong of a game that you just walked up to her and say, hey, my name is Mike, you mines. That wasn't my game. I pursued her.
And it's a decision.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you've been with her, you're used to her. Okay, you got to get creative. You got to, how much do you want to make it
Yeah.
work, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, question, sort of shifting gears, but I'm sure you go back to, but what makes marriage worth it?
What the word of God says, that a man that finds a good wife finds a man that finds a wife finds a good thing
That's
and
right.
obtain favor from the Lord.
That's right.
I became more blessed when I got married.
Absolutely.
And so I tell couples, and especially tell the men, I know Christian just got married. And I remember telling him, dude, you think your life is good now. And once you marry Aracelis, yeah, you found you a good thing, but God is going to bless you with more favor than you can imagine. And so, and everybody know that sometimes favor will get you further than what money can.
That's right.
Oh, yeah.
And so
That's right.
I think when you become married, you're happy and you come to know who God is in the marriage, putting God first in your marriage. The favor of God that be upon you, man, it's unheard of that the favor that you walk in. Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So some keys for a long-term relationship.
Keep her happy.
Keep her happy. Yeah.
Communication. Work so you can make money.
Yeah.
I mean, women are happy with money. Don't
Yeah.
let them fool you. Don't let the smooth taste fool you. Like, you don't have to have no money. You got to have some
You do.
money.
Yeah.
And I think it's
They
prime.
like to shop.
Yeah, they do. But it's on a man to provide and protect a woman.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just what it is.
Yep.
Through scripture, through whatever, it's sort of on us to provide and protect. Take
So
care
more
of her.
than to do it to keep her happy is more than that is because it's our duty, it's our
It is.
responsibility as a
But
It
man
is.
to
man,
do that.
I'm happy when I can provide for my wife. I
sure.
love the fact to tell her, girl, go get your nails and your feet done. Go do. Well, it's going to cost. Okay, just grab it out the bank account. I love doing that. I love being able to see her smile. I love making her Christmas and her birthday special. Any special occasions, like you got to think out of the box. How do you do it? You don't give her the same birthday cake you gave her last year. This time, give her a cake that you popping out of the cake. I mean,
Come
you got to
on.
do something different
Yeah.
to keep it happening.
Yeah.
And so when you say the next key is, being spontaneous. You got to stay spontaneous,
Yeah.
man. You got to be, and then you got to be creative in your marriage. And most of all, man, you have to love her knowing that she's a daughter of God.
For sure.
That's God's daughter that
sure.
He has blessed you with. And He's going
good.
to ask us at the end of the day, how did you handle my daughter that I blessed you with? Of all things.
And I would say in that you're actually even overlaying the idea of like keeping Christ in your marriage. Like, right?
100%.
Keep your Christianity or your God, like be godly and realize this woman is something God has blessed me with,
Yep.
but allowing your faith to be a part of your marriage.
There
Yeah,
you go.
yeah.
Yeah, how are you taking care of my daughter? I love that. That's a great way to look at it because it's not your wife. More than first before her being your wife, she is God's daughter.
That's right.
100%. Yeah.
So how do you take care of your daughter, right?
Yep.
Your
I
daughter's
mean,
father.
and I know me as a father, my daughter didn't have to want for anything. Our daughter, man, she knew all she had to do is say, come up and say, Daddy. And I mean, I'm pretty
Yeah.
sure with your girls. I mean, we all girl dads, right? And so we all know, man, if you have a daughter, she's going to steal your heart. And so you can imagine that our wives, it's the heart of God. And He wants His daughters protected.
That's good.
And so what He did, it wasn't like we had the choice. He actually assigned us Even when we were in our mother's wombs, he already knew that you was going to be with Noemi, with Paula, me with Cheryl. And he knew these are the men that I know that I can trust.
That I've assigned.
That I've assigned, that I can trust them with my daughter.
That's powerful.
It's just like when you ask for your wife hand in marriage. Her dad, he questioned you. And, you know, and so it's the same way. You know, it's like, I was my father-in-law's favorite son-in-law. He would tell everybody that. It's because of the fact that he's seen what I would do for his daughter. And so that goes back to the scripture, because with Cheryl's dad, I had favor with him. Anything I needed, anything I had to do, all I had to do was pick up the phone and call granddad. You know, because I was coming up at the time, and if I fell short, call granddad. He took care of me. You know, it's the same way. It was the favor because I took care of his daughter. The same way with God. We take care of his daughter.
That's good.
He gives us the favor.
Amen.
And he gives us all the provisions that we need to take care of her. And so that's to me is so important, guys, when it comes down to that. Yeah. So I know I probably taught some stuff that wasn't supposed to be talked about, but
no, it's great. Hey, just one. I'll do one question, and we'll start coming toward the end. But obviously, you lost a daughter. Not to focus too much on that, but I'm sure that was hard in terms of your relationship. How do you bounce back from loss in terms of your marriage, and how does that season sort of go with specifically toward your marriage, you and Cheryl? I know you guys had the loss of your daughter a couple of years ago, and then how did that affect your relationship? How did you move past, or how you?
So if you would have asked me this question, it's been now 7 years. So if you'd asked me 7 years, I wouldn't be able to answer it. But what I can say is this: is that Philippians 4:7, that the peace of God that surpasses all understanding will keep your heart and your mind unto the coming of Jesus Christ. So what we had to do, instead of turning to counselors, which we both went to, but the crazy thing is that the enemy thought he was going to destroy the marriage. Our marriage became stronger in the loss.
Wow.
And so, and man, that's so like, what's the word, oxymoron?
Yeah.
That's a difference, because a lot of couples, when they have a big loss, they divide. They divide.
Exactly.
Right?
High divorce rates when that happens.
Yeah. We became stronger. Individually, we had to get help, but we became stronger. And so our daughter, one thing that in her loss, one thing that we did never have to do is regret what we didn't do. We never had that regret. And even her last few words that she said to us when she was passing away, she said, "Mom and Dad, I want to let you guys know you guys are the best parents that any girl could have asked for." And she said, "But you guys got to let me go." And that was her conversation with us, right? And so I just remember that, and so clear. And that right there, I think, kind of like was the path of setting us free for what we had to go through those next few months. And then one thing, we always we were very animate, even though we lost her. We suffered a loss, but one thing we never suffered was a financial loss. And I think that's what happens also in big losses. And the reason why we didn't, well, once again, we had life insurance. I know this podcast is not about life insurance, but it's somewhat about it, because you have to make sure, guys, that's part of being a man, keeping your house in order.
For sure.
That's a mandate. Because at the end of the day, your life insurance is the last love letter you can leave your family. And
the Bible even says a good man leaves an inheritance to his children's children.
100%.
So you should, in my opinion, leave behind resources not just for your children, but for your grandchildren.
100%.
I agree.
And if you're not...
The stress that you didn't go through, that a couple is going to avoid by having something. I could see almost like in the mind of a woman, for example, it's the husband failed me. Because we lost our daughter, and now on top of that, we have to go through all this financial and grief. Financial
grief and the grief of losing a loved one. Yeah. Man, that's a hard place to be.
Yeah.
So
any advice you'd have for somebody who has went through a season of a loss, or even in loss in terms of a marriage? How do you
I would say that you have to pray. Number one, you have to come together and understand that everything that you did and everything where you are at that point is out of your hands. You can't control it, my daughter said, "Dad, you always fixed everything, but you can't fix this." She told me that. And if I could have, I would have fixed it. But I had to come to the realization that God is in control. And you have to understand is that it is the enemy's job to come in to divide couples. And so the word of God said, let no man put us under and or asunder. That means that in content, that means that don't let things in life come to divide you.
Yeah.
That's good.
You know, you have to remember the principle of what your marriage is built off of. And that principle is the foundation of God.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you have God in your life, you know, and you go through a loss of a loved one, an emotional loss, you know, that's what's going to keep you.
Yeah.
And, you know, a lot of times I have people that call me that lose people, and I always give them that scripture, Philippians 4:7, because that's what got me through. And it didn't really sink until, I mean, I heard that scripture time and time again, but it really didn't sink into my spirit until after we lost our daughter. Because he said, it talks about how he would guard your heart and your mind into the coming of Jesus Christ. So that means that I miss our daughter every single day. But what happens is that God guards my heart and my mind, so I don't lose my mind and that I don't become faint at heart.
Yeah, that's good.
You see what I'm saying? So,
Yes,
do I wake up with her in my mind? Yes, I do, every day. But God guards my mind so I don't go down that dark path, and he keeps my heart so my heart doesn't become faint.
Yeah,
Wow.
beautiful.
Yeah.
You know, I want to say I'm sort of done. Raul, you can close us out. Thank you, Uncle Mike, for coming out, for sharing your heart,
And I enjoyed it.
helping us through relationships on this beautiful Valentine's Day.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And that's a wrap, guys. Another excellent episode. We're going to probably get in that topic again sometime next week on our next episode. Keep tuning in. If this was of value to you, make sure you share it, you comment, and or let's study it. You know, this is a type of podcast that you study. I mean, you listen to it, there was a bunch of gold nuggets that was delivered today, and appreciate you guys, and God bless you. Anything else?
Nope, we're good.
Good to go.
I'm on my way to go grab flowers, guys.
Let's go.
So
Happy Valentine's Day.
happy Valentine's Day.
All right.
Good job.